it doesn't feel like long ago to think about when we showed up in Calgary and not knowing anything about the oil and gas industry. And, I think it was around that time when, the early days of cold bore were starting to develop into what this has become. We're sitting here in Houston, Texas at the Cold Bore Tech Shack, and I'm very honored to have the opportunity to do this and work for such an amazing company that facilitates this type of an environment. So I got my buddy Thomas Gerth here, and he's been visiting from Calgary the last couple of days. So what do you think about this place?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely enjoying it down here. You've given me the tour around, got to see a couple different neighborhoods. That's great, but definitely getting the exposure to Cold Bore's presence in Houston has been a great thing to see. I came across Cold Bore years and years ago, but you guys have really developed your brand into something new and exciting.
It's been really cool to be a part of. I've only been here for about 2 years, feels like 2 years, honestly, because I knew the guys for quite a bit before I started working here about a year ago. And I guess going a little bit back before that, we went to school together in Calgary, and we grew up together in the West Coast, just outside of Vancouver. And, here we are sitting in Houston now. It's pretty cool to watch that journey develop. And it doesn't feel like long ago to think about when we showed up in Calgary and not knowing anything about the oil and gas industry. And, I think it was around that time when, the early days of cold bore were starting to develop into what this has become. And man, remember when we would just we were on the West Coast, didn't know anything about oil and gas.
No, nothing.
Like Vancouver, for people that aren't familiar with the lower mainland of Vancouver on the West Coast of Canada, it's this big metro area, but it kind of feels like there's a bit of a bubble around it to an extent. Not in a bad way, but it's just its own thing. And you grow up there, and you just don't know much about what's outside of that region. And it's an amazing place. You've got mountains and ocean and all this really cool stuff to do, and you take it for granted. And I think we were, just graduated high school, maybe started going to school a little bit and trying to fiddle around with what we were doing. And I remember hearing about the rigs. And I was like, what's the rigs? And well, it's in Alberta. It's like, oh, what's that? What's the rigs in Alberta? I hear people are making money, and I needed to do something different, and ended up in Fort McMurray in the middle of winter on a pipeline, and never turned back. What was your story? You weren't far behind me there.
No, I mean, similar, right? Took a stab at school, wasn't working out. Start hearing these rumors about rigs. Oh, you got to go hit the rigs. First guy that shows up in your town with a big truck and a pocket full of cash. Well, where'd he come from? Well, the rigs. It's this mystical place you go where you make money and you come back and you show it off. And so yeah, you went out ahead of me out to Fort Mack. I followed not too long after. I landed in Lloydminster, right on the border there. Found my way onto a service rig, and same thing. Never looked back. Opened my eyes to a whole different world.
Yeah, it was new and exciting. And you just immediately started to see the opportunity, right? I remember being in the oil sands working on a ConocoPhillips job, and the scale of how big everything was. I was like, I got to learn more about what this is. And then I was sitting there in camp one night just Googling, programs to go back to school, because I knew I needed to do that at some point. And then SAIT, the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, came up in Calgary, and I was like, oh, Calgary's always seemed like a cool place. Maybe I should try to get in here. And I applied for school, and I was like, there's no way I'm not going to make it. I get in. Sure enough, I'm like, all right, I'm fired up. I'm moving to Calgary. I don't know anybody in Calgary or what I'm going to do or anything. I find a place to rent. I get into this program. I'm a year in, and then you showed up there.
Yeah,
same thing, right? How did you what made you go back to SAIT? How did you end up doing that?
Yeah, I was really enjoying my time working the rigs, hard work, loved it, making money. I mean, really blew my mind coming from BC, seeing guys in their early 20s buying houses. But I think I was just too curious. Every time we're doing something on the rig, we're breaking things down, a tool hand comes out, I just kept being, how does that work? Like what does that tool do? How does it take it apart? Show me what the inside looks like. Who I work on this rig, who built this rig, and kind of the day-to-day operations were great, but I kind of wanted to see like, well, who makes this happen? Who invented that thing over there? And usually the answer was someone who did engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's take a stab at that then. And that's you were there. You're already telling me what a great spot Calgary was, and what a great school SAIT was. And so I just figured, well, let's give it a try.
Yeah. Well, I think we could both say that was probably the best move we did. And, here we are again, sitting in Houston. Never would have thought that would be the case. And had a blast in Calgary for a couple of years. You're learning, right? I went into engineering because I just wanted to kind of create a blank slate of something that I could build off of, and met a lot of people in Calgary. It's anybody that's familiar with Calgary, it's a very entrepreneurial city. Coming from the West Coast, it was so different. Downtown Calgary is just, at the time, it was just on fire. Everybody was just excited, and the business was booming. And the cities goes through ups and downs just like anywhere. But we were very fortunate to be there at that point, and met some really amazing people. And I got connected to this group. We were all kind of a part of the same group, and everyone was, building off of each other and learning and everything. And, a lot of great mentors from some of the guys I went to school with there, with their dads and their companies and their backgrounds and all that. Anyway, stuck with the group, and there was this transfer to Montana Tech. That was the entrance to the US. And so we went down to Montana, and then, I guess you finished up there in Calgary, and, you know, you pivoted to go west at the time, and then we were off back on our own directions after we'd kind of come full circle there. So what made you I guess decide to move on from SAIT and go into the next step in mechanical engineering?
Yeah, ultimately, I had a great time at SAIT. Like you said, that was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. Got a wife out of it too. Side story there, but like you said, when we first came into Calgary, it was on fire, and you could just feel the energy, the young guys, the opportunity. And what ultimately made that decision was, a downturn. Mm-hmm. I probably would have just stuck with my 2-year SAIT diploma.
Yeah.
But things kind of slowed down, and job opportunities dried up a little bit, and I had the grades enough to carry on. And so I just looked at the opportunities in front of me, and I know that you guys had gone down to Montana, but being mechanical, I had the option of going down there or making my way over to through the transfer program to University of British Columbia out in Vancouver, and it was just to have the chance to enter into that school, which is such a well-regarded engineering school. I kind of had to jump at that, and you get in that class, like the competitive class of everyone that's in there. It's they're all overachievers, and it's good to put yourself in that environment to learn. So
Yeah, great environment to be in. And it was just that natural step for, we both kind of found that natural step. And yeah, and then life keeps going on, right? And so I'm in Montana, and this opportunity comes up. I was involved in the student group there, and went to this conference in Houston. And we were talking about this earlier the last couple of days here. I remember showing up in Houston for the first time, going like, man, this is big. Like, what is Houston all about? And you get exposed on a global scale really quick. And I just got a taste of it as a student there at the conference. And then I ended up going to Dubai the following year for that same conference in a different part of the world, and just seeing how connected Dubai and Houston and the world, and how it was just such a big eye-opening thing. Sure enough, the opportunity came up in Texas, energy capital of the world here. And, I just kind of pounced on that, and met some really great mentors along the way through school. And it's fun to see how everybody kind of goes different directions. And then, we maybe end up back in the same spot down the road, or the guys in Calgary are doing their thing, and, back and forth or wherever. And it just creates it doesn't matter where you're at. Right. And I've really enjoyed the fact that I came here, and I got to, eventually get plugged into a company like Cold Bore, it just felt like everything just kind of naturally happened. And, here I am. Like I said earlier, it's only been a year. Feels like more because I've known Cold Bore for a while, and it's just been a really exciting place to be. And I'm building I feel like I'm building a really great thing with my career and stuff. And I guess what was a little bit of your after University of British Columbia, mechanical engineering. Now you're thinking, okay, what do I do? And what you ended up back in Calgary, right? So how did that all work out?
Yeah, ultimately, kind of, I came out because same goal that I went in with. What drove me back to mechanical engineering was an interest in equipment and tools. So I basically started thinking that's why I went back, and that's what I want to focus on my efforts on coming out. So I was lucky enough to come out, land a job at a completions tool company, working on different things, tow ports, unlimited fracturing technology, which was pretty cutting edge at that time. Now there's a lot more competitors and guys in the market, and it's cool to see that gaining traction. And then, yeah, I kept always looking kind of for the next opportunity. So when an opportunity came up with an equipment builder, I jumped at that, and that really opened my eyes to a lot of things, because small company, we started taking on bigger projects, just opportunity that was in front of them. And that kind of landed me the last couple of years. We were building high spec automated service rigs for the overseas market. And that's, I think that's one thing that I've always enjoyed about my oil and gas journey in general, is that it's one of the few industries that I know of that gives the young guys a crack at serious opportunity, something that you might not be able to get close to in 5-10 years experience somewhere else. And the opportunity to travel, like it's so, like you touched on, so internationally plugged in everywhere. How many guys do you know that have worked all over the world? I've been fortunate enough to go overseas, work all over Canada, come down to Texas. It's a bit of a passport.
It is
Just putting your foot in the door
to the world.
to the world. Yeah, absolutely.
Global industry, a lot of opportunity, a lot of problems to solve, and ultimately we're problem solvers. And I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of people like yourself that are very engineer, problem solving minded people that are always coming up with cool ideas and stuff. And I've kind of gone down the road of facilitating the environment to connect people and develop business opportunities and just live in that space. And I think as we've all progressed our careers, we've naturally found ourselves in the right spots. And it's fun to just let that happen and just keep looking forward to what the next thing is. And I think that's how I naturally ended up at Cold Bore. It was like, well, people were telling me to pay attention to Cold Bore, and I was just kind of open-minded, having the teachable environment, the attitude of being teachable and just kind of positive and thinking ahead and all that. And people were like, you should pay attention to this, and started watching what was going on. And then ultimately I got connected to Brett, who's part of starting up Cold Bore, and met everybody else that was involved a little bit over the years. And here I am. And it's just solving problems and doing the stuff that was hard to do for the industry is what Cold Bore has been doing, and I get to be a part of it. Again, I don't know, from your perspective, you've seen some things in completions, right? Like,
Yeah.
what as a guy that's I'm always curious to ask that question, as a guy that's maybe been watching from the outside looking in for a little while, of like, what's your perspective on Cold Bore? What do what are some of the problems you see in the industry? Maybe some ideas we can talk about, or just, I don't know, what is your thoughts outside looking in?
I mean, outside looking in, I because I was aware of Cold Bore at an earlier date than most. I mean, I first came along when it was kind of in its acoustics, when we were using it on one of the companies I'd worked with previously, or looked at using it for verification of sleeve opening and things like that. And And then that thought, okay, well, that's interesting because it gave you kind of some sort of variable that you could track outside of. Other than that, there was really no data there before, right? You're not going to see a pressure spike at that of that magnitude. So watching it go from that, which was primarily, as I understood it as an outsider back then, acoustics for during completions, and then turning into what it is now, and the branding, the recognition, but even just the value, because I have a unique perspective because service rig background for me, right? And pretty archaic technology for the most part on that side of the industry. Whereas completions and drilling have really had kind of the cutting edge, the tip of the spear for new technology. And I know that that's a bit of the origin story of how cold bore started, right? Was the comparison from drilling technology versus completions. So I think that I would love to see continual technology development on, I mean, the well servicing side, but the completion side, and seeing you guys come in and actually add value. Because a lot of this stuff, as we know, there's a perception around how it works, but there really isn't a lot of metrics. And from what I understand, where you guys are at now is you're actually, being able to provide people with useful data, because not all data is useful. And if it isn't useful, there's no point in having it in the first place. So for you guys to be able to benchmark and come in and do what you do, what you guys have been building towards, and give that useful data, and then allow the operators to, like, that is a huge stepping stone forward from what I'm seeing, is that gives them a baseline that they can trust, and that they can therefore start to manipulate variables off of and gauge performance. And that is kind of an industry first. So outside looking in, I think that that's pretty fantastic. Like where you guys are headed and the momentum behind it, it's overdue, and I'm glad to see you guys gaining the traction that you deserve. But I think it's exciting to watch.
Well, yeah, I appreciate the feedback, and it is definitely an exciting environment. Every week is something new and productive. A year ago when I started here, there wasn't a whole lot of conversations going on with the pressure pumpers, and that's been a big thing over the last 6 months, especially. And I think where we're going now, it's really just it's exactly where it needs to be. We're connecting companies to create standardization that is being the foundation for what the path forward is, and everybody's agreeing upon it. We're seeing a lot of the major operators come to the table right now, and the next 6 months will be exciting. And I always say I'm always fired up, but man, I am never been more fired up. And we get to do this in Houston, being in Texas, and maybe just to kind of pivot from that a little bit. Talking about a little bit more about Texas, right? Like what do you think about Texas too, right? I think you were done a little bit of work here. You visited a couple of times, and I think this is maybe your first time spending a little bit more time in Houston. But what do you think about Texas?
I mean, the way I see it is, look at the metrics. There's a reason why it's, what is it, second fastest growing state in all the U.S. right now, and there's good reason for it. I enjoy Austin. Like, Austin's a great city to go get a weekend away in, right? Live music scene, that's great. But you come here and there's just a certain momentum, and it kind of feels like how Calgary felt when we were there and things were booming back. I don't know what that would have been, 2012, something like that. That energy and that optimism, and actually people are willing to make deals, I guess. Everyone you talk to is excited to be here, and they've all got something that they're excited about. So they love the energy, they love the city. So it's definitely a progressive, like, forward moving environment. So it's
Houston's always got that feel. It's like people are here for a purpose. I mean, there's obviously a lot of people, massive city, 7-8 million people or whatever it is, but people that we are around in our day to day have generally, people are here for a purpose, or you get that feeling. And and it's just a city that brings the, no pun intended, but the energy together, right? It's the energy capital of the world, and we get, having this tech house here in the middle of the Houston Heights feels like we're just in the buzz of it all. And I'm really looking forward to having more and more conversations like this. This is, for the audience, this is new for me to have conversations like this, and just doing more of these podcasts. And um, shout out to everybody at Cold Bore that's making this possible. And I'm looking forward to bringing more people in and having productive conversations about solving problems and just talking about exciting things. And oil and gas industry and beyond. Right? We're not limiting these topics to anything, and we can just come in here and talk about anything. So next time you come visit, we'll have to do this again. And
No, absolutely. And I'm excited, just excited as you are to be here and obviously be at the first. We can only go up from here.
thanks for coming on, and we'll pick this up whenever the next time is.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.